Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Hello and welcome to another exciting edition of Cannabis Common Sense. This week we have our interview guest is Bobby West. Bobby is an activist in Michigan with the squash off events all around the world. We actually participated with him in Jalisco in northern Mexico. So we also have an extensive hemp news segment for you tonight. So without further ado, we will bring on the infamous Dancing Cannabis Leaves.
I feel the force.
Okay, our first news story tonight's from Washington, D.C. A key U.S. House of Representatives committee, the Judiciary Committee, on Thursday approved a bill to federally legalize marijuana and promote social equity just last week. The Marijuana Opportunity, Reinvestment, and Expungement Act, or the MORE Act, cleared the House Judiciary Committee, which is chaired by the legislation's sponsor, Representative Jerrold Nadler of New York, on a 26-15 vote. The tally fell largely along party lines, with all Democrats supporting the measure and all but 2 Republicans voting against it. The development comes 1 week after the full House voted in favor of a defense spending bill that includes an amendment that would protect banks that service state legal cannabis businesses from being penalized by federal regulators. Nadler said in his opening remarks, quote, "This long overdue and historic legislation would reverse failed federal policies criminalizing marijuana. It would also take steps to address the heavy toll this policy has taken across the country, particularly among communities of color. I've long believed that the criminalization of marijuana has been a mistake. The racially disparate enforcement of marijuana laws has only made it worse, with serious consequences, particularly for communities of color," end quote, Jerrold Nadler said. Nadler also emphasized the racial disparities in marijuana enforcement by pointing out that his own son was caught selling cannabis in high school but was brought back to his home rather than be incarcerated. The chairman said if his son was black, police, quote, would have arrested him, end quote. Nadler's cannabis legislation passed the House last year, but did not advance in the United States Senate under GOP Mitch McConnell's control. This time around, advocates are optimistic that something like the chairman's bill could be enacted now that Democrats run both chambers in the White House, and as more states are moving to enact legalization. The legislation would remove marijuana from the Controlled Substances Act, allow people with cannabis convictions to have their records expunged, and create a federal tax on marijuana, with the revenue going to support community reinvestment and other programs. With respect to the MORE Act, the latest version does not include language that was added last year before the House floor vote that would have prevented people with previous cannabis convictions from obtaining federal permits to operate marijuana businesses. So that is not included in this year's act. That was a contentious provision that appeared at the last minute last year, which we strongly oppose. To the south of the U.S., a top Mexican senator says that the stage is set for lawmakers to actually pass a marijuana legalization bill during the new session, after multiple attempts in recent years fell short of getting over the finish line. It's been about 3 years since the Mexican Supreme Court first declared that the country's prohibition on the personal possession and cultivation of cannabis was unconstitutional. Lawmakers were then obligated to enact the policy change, but were unable to reach a consensus on legislation to put in place regulations for marijuana programs by the last session's end. At the request of legislatures, the court agreed to extend its deadline for Congress to formally end prohibition on multiple occasions, but because of the repeated failed attempts to meet those deadlines, Earlier this year, Mexican Supreme Court justices ultimately voted to end criminalization on their own in June. There's still a lack of regulations for legal sales, however, and Mexican Senate Majority Leader Ricardo Monreal Avila of the ruling Morena party said the plan is to fill that gap via legislation this session, which started earlier this year. After the Supreme Court independently invalidated prohibition earlier this year, advocates stressed that the decision underscores the need for legislators to expeditiously pass a measure to implement a comprehensive system of legal and regulated sales. They want to ensure that a market is established that's equitable, addresses the harms of criminalization on certain communities, and promotes personal freedom. Lawmakers came close to achieving that goal over the past 3 years, but failed to get the job done. As lawmakers in Mexico work to advance the reform legislation, there's been a more lighthearted push to focus attention on the issue by certain members and activists. That push has mostly involved planting and gifting marijuana. Late last year, a top administration official was gifted a cannabis plant by a senator on the Mexican Senate floor, and she said she'd be making it a part of her personal garden. A different lawmaker gave the same official, Interior Ministry Secretary Olga Sanchez Cordero, a marijuana joint on the floor of the Chamber of Deputies in 2019. Cannabis made another appearance in the legislature last year when Mexican Senator Jesusa Rodriguez of the Morena Party decorated her desk with a marijuana plant. Drug reform advocates have also been cultivating hundreds of plants in front of the Senate and the Mexican Supreme Court in the Planton 420 movement across Mexico, putting pressure on legislatures to make good on their pledge to advance legalization. In Ohio, voters in more than a dozen Ohio municipalities will decide on ballot measures to decriminalize marijuana next month. As it stands, 22 jurisdictions across Ohio have already adopted local statutes effectively decriminalizing cannabis possession, some of which have been passed by voter initiatives, while others were adopted by city councils. Now activists have succeeded in collecting enough signatures to qualify cannabis proposals for the November ballot to reduce the local punishment for low-level marijuana possession to the lowest penalty allowed by law, which is 0 days in jail and $0 fine. Meanwhile, a separate campaign recently cleared a final hurdle in Ohio to begin collecting signatures for a 2022 ballot initiative to legalize marijuana statewide. The Coalition to Regulate Marijuana Like Alcohol launched its ballot effort in July, and the Attorney General certified the measure in August after his office rejected summary language of an earlier version. Ohio voters rejected a 2015 legalization initiative that even some reform advocates opposed because it's a oligarchy model that would have granted exclusive control over cannabis production to the very funders who paid to put the measure on the ballot. Fortunately, that one failed. In Nebraska, activists in Nebraska on Friday unveiled the language of a pair of initiatives to legalize medical marijuana in Nebraska. Supporters now have until July of next year to gather thousands of voter signatures to put the measure on the 2022 ballot. The petitioning drive to qualify the two initiatives will begin Saturday in Lincoln near the University of Nebraska football game, where advocates say they plan to, quote, take advantage of the crowds to kick off the effort, end quote. Together, the two initiatives from Medical Marijuana Movement, or MMM, would protect qualified patients from legal consequences for cannabis and regulate businesses that produce, distribute, and sell marijuana products to those patients. Advocates say they're done waiting for lawmakers to act on the issue and will instead take the issue directly to voters. Repeated pushes to legalize through the state's unicameral legislature have fizzled, most recently in May. I actually went and testified along with Dr. Rachel Knox from Oregon in front of the Nebraska legislature back in 2012. In 2019, the state's Attorney General argued in an opinion that efforts to legalize medical marijuana would be preempted by federal law and would, quote, be therefore unconstitutional. Nebraskans for Medical Marijuana announced the new ballot campaign just hours after the most recent legislative effort failed. Here in Oregon, the Oregon Liquor Control and Cannabis Commission, or OLCC, last week recalled Cura select brand tincture products after the company mixed up its line of THC and CBD products. The Commission issued an initial recall for some of the company's products on September 21st after consumers reported that the CBD products were getting them high. The subsequent recall was for the THC tincture, which would actually contain the Select brand CBD formulation, the OLCC said. They said, quote, "After our preliminary investigation, we believe this mistake occurred due to unintentional human error," end quote, Curaleaf, the parent company Cura, said in a statement. Individuals who purchased the affected CBD products reported paranoia, mind fog, and feeling extremely high, the Commission said. Mark Pettinger, spokesman for the OLCC cannabis program, told us that he couldn't think of anything similar to this happening in the past. The product mix-up was reported to the OLCC by a customer from Idaho that had purchased what they believed to be CBD products in Oregon. Last year, Cura was hit with a record $110,000 fine for, quote, "dishonest conduct," end quote, for falsely claiming that a line of Select vapes contained 100% cannabis. Across the river, new regulations took effect on Saturday, October 2nd in Washington, expanding the pool of applicants eligible to receive licensure to participate in Washington's legal marijuana industry. Under the Washington state new policy, those with either felony criminal records or multiple misdemeanors are no longer ineligible from consideration for licensure. The rule change comes as lawmakers have prioritized efforts to strengthen social equity within the state's legal marijuana industry. In April, Washington legislators approved House Bill 1443, which provides resources for those with past marijuana convictions who are seeking to engage in the cannabis-related business. In South Dakota, the South Dakota Legislature is trying to strip members of the state's medical marijuana subcommittee. They voted this week to rescind key provisions in South Dakota's voter-approved medical cannabis initiative, or Measure 26. Last week, subcommittee members decided 6-4 to eliminate the ability for qualified patients to home cultivate marijuana. Nearly 70% of voters decided in favor of ballot Measure 26 last November, which allows South Dakota patients to either obtain cannabis from state-licensed dispensaries or to grow it themselves. Members of the full Marijuana Interim Study Committee must now vote on whether to advance the recommendations to the South Dakota Legislature. Lawmakers in South Dakota have repeatedly expressed resistance to amending the state's marijuana laws. Republican Governor Kristi Noem campaigned against the medical cannabis initiative in the months immediately prior to its election, and has spoken against medical marijuana on a national level as well. In February, South Dakota's House lawmakers voted to delay the law's implementation. However, that effort failed when House and Senate lawmakers failed to come to an agreement on conflicting provisions. State regulators are on a timeline to begin issuing identification cards to qualified South Dakota medical marijuana patients by May 15th of 2022. Voters are still awaiting the fate of a separate voter initiative ballot measure, Amendment A, which sought to legalize the personal possession and retail sale of marijuana by adults. 54% of the South Dakota voters decided on Election Day in favor of legalizing marijuana and the sale of marijuana. However, Governor Noem facilitated litigation seeking to strike down the law as unconstitutional. In February, Judge Christina Klinger of the state's 6th Judicial Circuit Court ruled in favor of that challenge, opining that the measure violates state requirements that ballot measures not encompass more than one topic. Justices on the state Supreme Court heard an appeal of the case in April, but have yet to render a decision either upholding or striking down the lower court's ruling. Our last story tonight is from Nevada. In Nevada earlier this year, Governor Sisolak signed multiple marijuana reform measures into law, some of which took effect on October 1st. Assembly Bill 158 took effect on October 1st, which revises first-time penalties imposed on minors who possess small quantities of cannabis. It reduces existing penalties, which used to include up to 6 months in jail and a $1,000 fine, down to community service. The measure also requires courts to automatically seal records for those offenses if the offender completes their community service. Legislation to regulate on-site cannabis consumption spaces also took effect on October 1st. Assembly Bill 341 allows adults 21 and older to purchase and consume adult use cannabis products on site at any licensed, quote, cannabis consumption lounge, end quote. The bill also provides reduced license application fees for qualifying social equity applicants. Nevada's Bill 400, which was also signed into law earlier this year, took effect in July. This measure amends the state's traffic safety statutes so that the operation of a motor vehicle with trace amounts of either THC or its metabolite is no longer a per se violation of law. Separate legislation permitting consumers to obtain cannabis products via curbside pickup took effect in May. That's the end of our hemp news segment tonight. We are going to start our interview with Bobby West, who's the organizer of the squash off contests that are happening across the world now. If you are a loved one, though, are seeking a doctor who can help you get a medical marijuana permit, well, we have doctors who can help. Just give us a call at 503-235-4606. That's 503-235-4606. Now we go to our interview with Bobby West, who's also known as Uncle Stoner. Stay tuned and help us restore hemp. Good night. Well, I would like to introduce a friend, Bobby West, also known as Uncle Stoner. And Bobby has been organizing since 2017 the Squash Off, which is a resin press and judging event where people can compare cannabis. And I got to meet him in person and participate as a judge down at the Jalisco Cup outside of Guadalajara back a couple of years ago. We had a great time. But you're doing these squash offs all over the place, right, Bobby? You just did one at Boston, which is at the Boston Freedom Rally, which now, since the Seattle Hemp Fest is kind of folded, the Boston Freedom Rally is the biggest pro-cannabis festival in America, I think, don't you?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. It's one of the biggest. I've seen it where anywhere from 80 to 100,000 people come each day. This one, because it's kind of spread out at the park, I think they probably had maybe 50,000, maybe more at this one. So, it's the biggest. And what's that?
It's on the Boston Commons, which is a pretty historic park there where a lot of the initial American revolutionaries gathered. And
yes. And also where people back in the day when they had the Freedom Rally were getting arrested at the Freedom Rally for smoking cannabis. Now you go forward into the future of now, we're sitting there holding actually the only live interactive educational cannabis contest there at the Freedom Rally. So a lot of things have changed there, because it's a fun time, but also it's a scary time because a lot of these big companies and these people don't really care about the people or the plant. They care more about the profit. And things go downhill. And same with a lot of events. A lot of events that you have there have competitions. Unfortunately, everything's done behind closed doors. So you don't so the competitor, all he gets to do is hear if he wins or not. He doesn't hear why he didn't win. And then the consumer, all they get to hear from normal events is, oh, this took first, this took second, never knowing why or understanding why it was such a high quality to take first, second, or third. Well, with my competition I created, we put that all there in front of you to where we first put, if it's a flower entry, we put the flower under microscope. We project it up to a TV screen so the audience can see as the judges critique it and give their scores and reason to the audience behind their scores. And the audience can ask questions. And then the people that are competing, they can sit there and watch. They're not allowed to come up to the judges' table, but they can watch and hear. Yeah.
I noticed from the microscopic inspection, which I hadn't seen prior to that, you saw things that you wouldn't have seen otherwise, like insect predators or sloughed off trichomes or hermaphrodite flowers and things that you wouldn't have seen with the naked eye.
Mold. You'll see mold under there. You can even tell if they once they harvested, if they kept light on it. Because once you harvest something, you need to keep it in the dark for 72 hours to let them trichomes really develop right and without any heat and everything, light to degrade it. And a lot of people don't realize, well, you can tell that put it under a microscope. My judges, if they're good enough, which a lot of them are, they can say, hey, no, you let too much light in here in that 72-hour process. They can tell them that. There's a lot of things they can tell just by putting it under the microscope and everything. And same thing with the hash. They can see how the quality of the hash that they made, if it's all heads or if it's all just the stems or stems and heads. You want, especially in good hash, you just want all the heads.
And so explain to our audience what a squash off is, because a lot of people, I don't think, understand the whole concept of the rosin press. It's still kind of new.
Well, it's kind of new. And because there's a lot of difference out there, clean meds. And clean meds, it's something that is done and made without any kind of chemicals or solvent and thing. And so my competition is considered a clean med competition, because all we do is take a cannabis flower or hash that was made with water, ice and water. Take that and we press it with just heat and pressure. And that heat and pressure.
That's the rosin press, and that's a special machine, and it heats it up and it applies a certain amount of pressure. How does that work?
As far as the heat,
how much pressure?
Okay, with the flower or hash, there's still a lot of terpenes and stuff that are trapped in the flower and in the fat cells. And so when you put the heat and pressure to it, that loosens all that up. It heats up the fat, the lipids and all that, and all the terpenes can come out of that and everything. So it's just a natural way to get the natural rosin out. It's a way to force it out with heat, just plain heat and pressure. I mean, there's a lot of more sciencey stuff to it. I actually probably couldn't exactly say, but it's just down to just plain heat and pressure, applying the right amount of pressure, right amount of heat, get them trichomes and all that, and the terpenes to come out.
So how many different people make these devices, the rosin press machine?
There's probably over maybe 50 or 100 more different companies out there now, because it's really popular. I mean, the first time I ever made rosin, I used my wife's expensive hair straightener. Cost me $300, let me tell you, because I ruined it. But that back in the day, that's how some kids used to do it. You take a hair straightener, one of them flat hair straightener things, and you just put parchment paper or the flour in there. Kids, don't try this at home. You can't do it, though. I mean, you're not going to get as much yield. Of course, it depends on the flour. If there's a lot of trichomes and stuff in there, you can use that. But the best way is to get.
What was that? When did you first try it with the hair press?
That was probably in 2016 or so. I tried it with a hair straightener and got some rosin from it. And then, of course, as I said,
when did you first start seeing commercial rosin press machines out there?
I think the first one that I seen was probably at Dab Wars in Detroit, and that had
Kirk Reed's event.
Yeah,
I went to a couple of those. I might have met you.
Adam Albrook, Mr. Hashbash worked there as well. Yeah,
okay.
I kind of first saw that, and then Rosin Tech, they had their presses out. Of course, they had a little different style, kind of a hand press thing like this. And actually, I had it in my room during the Hashbash Cup, and that was, I think, 2016 when I had one of them in my room. Had a bunch of people in there with all different kinds of stuff they wanted me to press and see how it worked. And that's kind of also how I also came up with the idea of doing a competition of squash off. That's one of the reasons why I came up with this competition as well, is because I see that, it's kind of exciting to see just as flower, sit there and see it as bud form, see it under the microscope, see what it looks like, and then all of a sudden see it pressed and see that nice rosin dripping out of it. It's a beautiful sight, especially to a lot of people who've never seen it. I mean, this is something new to them, and it helps educate them on everything from the plant.
Well, Bobby, you've been an activist in Jamaica and Amsterdam since you were a very young man, kind of like me. When did you first start? When did you first try cannabis? Was it there? You're from Michigan, right?
No, actually, I'm from originally from a town called Grass Valley, California. Elevation 420, Northern Cal. From there, right before I turned
community.
Yes, I actually smoked cannabis. I guess I'll be honest, when I was 10 years old. When I was, well, actually maybe eight or nine. Because I remember, I'll be honest with you, my father panicked one day, and he had to run across the street to our neighbors out in the country because the horse was out into the garden. So I go over to run over there. The reason he was so upset, panicking, because the horse was eating the cannabis plants. And of
Ah,
course, I guess my dad and the neighbor were growing together. So I sit there. I, of course, knew enough that, ooh, hey, I can do something with this. So I sit there and plucked all these water leaves. Of course, I didn't know the water leaves, but I dried them out. And I took them to school, and I traded them for fishing poles and this and that. So I hate to say it, yes, I was a little diller as a little kid. So probably around, I think it was either 9 or 10 is when I first tried it for the first time. But then, high school and stuff, I really didn't try smoke it. Of course, in the military, all 15 years of the military service and VA
you
hospital.
were in the military for 15 years. I'm a service-connected disabled veteran, but I was in the military for less than a year when they offered me the ability to get a medical discharge. So I bailed. But
Yeah.
for 15
Yeah,
years.
I was in the Navy, active Navy for 4 years during Desert Storm, Desert Shield. Got out of the Navy, went to the Navy Reserve for a year. Did that, got out because I'll be honest with you, I smoked cannabis then when I got out of the Navy, and then I went at Reserve. I smoked it a few times because I was having PTSD and flashbacks, and so I smoked it to see if it helped me out. And had a piss test, but luckily the CO let me resign. So that didn't go into my record. And then I went, after that, I went into the Army National Guard and was a combat medic for the Army National Guard from, I think, 94 all the way up to 2001, and also worked VA hospitals. But, even in the National Guard, Navy Reserve, I only smoked it once. I knew it helped me, but I didn't really think about it. And I'll be honest with you, especially being disabled and everything, the VA, all the different drugs they put down me, it kind of turned me into a drug addict where I was doing a lot harder drugs. Trust me. I mean, and finally, when I smartened up and moved to my hometown, a small town, Grass Valley, of course, there you can't find too many drugs, at least back then, but there was cannabis around, a lot of cannabis. So at first, because of drug of choice and only being the one there for me to use, I started smoking it. And I started realizing, though, after so many months of doing it, how well it helped me out, and how my attitude, my energy, my dreams, I didn't have as much flashbacks and stuff. And so I realized, wait, this is helping me out. This plant is doing good for me. And that's kind of how I decided to become an activist, because if it helps me out, I'm sure it'll help a lot of other people out. And then through all my travels, I've seen the magnificence of this plant and what it's done for people, medically and recreational.
I have seen pictures of you in Amsterdam with your dreadlocks. And how did you, huh?
Okay, someone just tried to call me. Sorry about that. So we cut out.
I had the same thing happen. But how did you first get into the activist community? How did you kind of become Uncle Stoner?
Well, at first, once I got my disability from the military and stuff, and I was smoking cannabis, I wanted to learn more about cannabis and everything. So I first went to Jamaica, met the Jamaican family, a lot of people there, Rastafarians and stuff. Went up to Bob Marley's house where they set me down where I could look and see that doorstep, 3 little birds upon my doorstep. And his cousins came out and started putting beeswax in my hair and braiding it and everything. And from that, I started my dreadlocks. But so I learned about cannabis a little bit there. And then from there, I wanted to go to Amsterdam because I knew that was the focal point of all cannabis. Back then, everybody went to Amsterdam to get genetics, learn about and everything.
That was what, like 2002 or?
Yes, 2002. Yes, 2002. I was there. Just went over there, stayed at a hostel, and I just started meeting a lot of these people. Ben Dronker, amazing guy. Since he sees, I mean, I love that man. He was one of them guys that even with all my problems, I'd say mental problems, because I didn't have my PTSD and all my other stuff's under check. He still took me under his wing and treated me well. Him and Franco, Eagle Bill, a lot of these old school legends that done a lot for this cannabis community that people don't even realize. and they treated me really well. And same with Eddie Lepp, you know, spending time with him over there. And I didn't start out to be activist. I just started out that I mean, I still, I don't know, I guess you could call me activist, but I'm just a person. I love this plant and I love people. And I know with this plant in everybody's life could be a lot better for a lot of people. Plain and simple. Hemp form, you know, cannabis form, medical form, all of it, people need it in their life. And so I just started, anytime someone put a camera in front of me, I talk about cannabis. And, you know, and just kind of started doing that. And then I started getting invited, speaking at different places and stuff, telling my story about how cannabis helped me out. Then I started helping out cannabis patients. Like I helped out one of the youngest cannabis patients in history at that time, Amelia, out of New Mexico, helped get her on the proper CBD because she was having seizures inside the womb. She died when she was first born. They wanted to put a do not resuscitate on her. Doctor said, even with medication, she'd never have any kind of quality of life. She would be in a wheelchair, couldn't walk or talk or any of this. I found out about it and found out that her mother wanted to try CBD or tried one, but unfortunately with the way it was processed with ethanol, it actually helped and kind of made it worse for her seizures. So I got her on a certain CBD that actually changed her life. And you know, she's not on that one anymore, but she's taken others. But now she's going back to school. She's going to school next year, kindergarten. She doesn't have assistance, but she's walking and talking, everything. Everything that the doctor said that she would not do, if with their medication, she's doing because of cannabis and CBD. So, I mean,
it's really kind of miraculous, isn't it? Yeah. That you see this drug that's been demonized, and it's a miraculous cure for so many different conditions. It's just amazing.
It is, and it's sad. It comes all down to money, Politicians, pharmaceuticals, alcohol, all those people, they want their money. You know.
Yeah. And
they takes it away. It takes away the profits, takes away the pharmaceutical profits. And its problem is our government really doesn't care enough about us. They care about the corporations. And the corporations are only the win. And the problem with now, with all these corporations getting involved, all these, you got, what is it? One of the cigarette companies, they have a contract for cannabis. There's a lot of other companies, and they don't really care about the people of the plant.
Not at all. In fact, I've been the subject.
And it's not going to be medication anymore. It's going to be the same side effects. You get a big old list. Oh, smoke this. It helps you with this, but gives you this many side effects because of the way they're going to grow it eventually and all the stuff they're going to put in it. And I think that's why it's important that we still have this black market. I mean, I hate to say it, but a lot of people, all the growers I know, they care about what goes in their plant and how they grow it, how they cure it, how they store it. You know, yeah, it's not tested and it's not all this big company, but it's good product. And that's the problem nowadays. It's going to go downhill, and the prices are ridiculous in a lot of these places. You know, a person that's on a disability and getting disability money, a lot of times can't pay for their own medication because it's so high at a dispensary. And that's ridiculous. They should be able to grow it themselves. They should have a place to grow up themselves. And that's the problem also. Is there's a lot of laws out there. Like some people that are staying, they can buy cannabis, but unless they look at their lease, and if they're renting somewhere, it may say in there, you can't have cannabis on that property or smoke it. So you're in trouble. Same way with growing it. So our government kind of monopolizes on control of this plant. It's starting to be for the government only, not for the people. Or it's for the people, but with the government control. And that's not right, because this plant has been put on this planet for us and for a reason. That's
I have been the target of a massive takeover of my business. Our producer here, Bill, and I were both robbed of our work, and it now belongs to a group of Canadian people that are on the board of directors of the Kronos Group. And so they actually just stole everything from us with forgeries and a corrupt judge. You know, they overpowered us with money and lawyers. And after 3 years, after 3 years, I demanded a jury trial, and just before the jury trial was supposed to start, they dismissed their case. And so now the only way I can get our property back is to hire lots of lawyers in Canada and America and go after them. And of course, I can't afford that. And they know.
I'm sorry to interrupt. And that's the problem with these big corporations. They have the money, they have the lawyers, they can stomp on all us little people. And if what we're doing is right and means something, they don't care. And that's what's so sad nowadays is our government is not for the people anymore. It's for the corporations, whoever gives them the most money. And things need to change. Where we're going, I hate to see. It's sad how we're going, especially with this virus. Everything's going on. You know, it's sad. It's putting people against people. They're purposely, getting us against each other. People for against the virus, people against the vaccines, this and that. And they're making it where it should just be each other's choice. If you want to get the vaccine, get the vaccine. If you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. But that's my opinion. I believe in that each person do what they want as long as they don't do harm physically or purposely do harm to someone else.
That's the libertarian ethic, and I think we have to expand individual rights and curtail government and corporate rights. We need individuals to have more power than collectives. So currently, the collectives rule, especially the corporations. But we need to usher in what former FDR's Vice President Henry Wallace said was the century of the common man. And we really do need to move in that direction. Unfortunately, fascism has won World War II. I mean, they defeated the biggest fascist regime in Nazi Germany, but they took over our government, the Western governments, and imported the Nazi propagandists to rule our country, basically. And so that's where we're at. But this is a show about marijuana, so let's get back to that. So how did you become Uncle Stoner, and was your first squash off in Detroit at the Dab Wars, or did you set it up after that?
First time I saw a press, actually, it was at Dab Wars. But no, our first squash off was at Chalice, 2017 Chalice Music Festival. I came up with the idea because I reached out to Matt Stain a few times during high times and said, hey, let me get a house. Let me record and film all the judges and get their input and all that critiques and all. Oh, no, we can't do that. No. So I'm like, okay, fine. So I decided, I decided to come up with this idea. I came up with this idea of squash off. One of the reasons and how I hold it is I was in Future Farmers of America back in the day, and I judged poultry and dairy. I had to sit there and judge it, and then I had to sit there and give my reasons to this panel. So I just sort of turned it around where my judges give their reason behind their scores to the audience. So yeah, that's why I created it. And the first one is 2017. Back to that Uncle Stoner, how'd I get it? Well, being over in Amsterdam and having dreadlocks and being hyper as I am, some people loved me, some places didn't, but 90% of the places loved me. And those are the places I wanted to bring other people back to and make sure they had a good time. So back then I started a tour, I'd free tour out of the Flying Pig. People take a bunch of mushrooms and I take them on a tour around Amsterdam to all the little cool spots and the neat people and all that. One time I had about 70 kids with me, which I have to tell you, 70 kids, you know how big the streets are there. You have 70 kids following you. That's the whole street. So I'd walk ahead of them like 10, 15 feet, and I'd walk up to someone and say, I don't know what it is. I got this strange power. Watch. Stop. And all of a sudden, of course, 70 kids in the street stop. Of course, that's going to freak you out a little bit, right? He walks away. I'm like, I don't know what it is. Follow me. And I'll look at him. You can come too. Pretty soon, I think at the end of the night, I had 130 people with me, on this one night. It was a fun time. It's just all about good energy. We didn't have to pair diesel. The manager would let me ahead of line with how many people I had. As long as they had their money ready, you get in, boom, we'd get straight in, and then finish the night partying at pair diesel. One night we came back, we were at the Flying Pig downstairs, about 30 of them and all this. And this guy from Mexico City said, oh, what do they call you? I said, I don't know, Cal Piffy. He goes, no, you're Tio Pacheco. I'm like, Tio Pacheco. He goes, yeah, Uncle Stoner. And all of a sudden, the whole room started chatting, Uncle Stoner, Uncle Stoner. So that's how I got it. And of course, I had a journal. I kept a journal at the time with me. And so they all signed it and all that. So I still have that journal. And then so I got these shirts made up because all of a sudden now High Times was coming around. So I got these shirts made up. You know, it said Uncle Stoner and had a marijuana leaf right here. You know, and that's what I started introducing myself kind of to them as. And at first they're like, yeah. But once I started getting their genetics and taking them back to my farm and growing them, and then somehow getting them back to Amsterdam and showing them what I did with them, they kind of started calling me Uncle Stoner, and it kind of stuck. You know, once like Ben Dronker, Mr. Hayes, Steve Hayes, a lot of Eagle Bill, and a lot of these guys, once they started, and Soma, once they started calling me Uncle Stoner, it kind of stuck. And then people done a few videos on me. There's a show called High Chaparral where they followed me around, and they, of course, put my name up there as Uncle Stoner on the TV show and all that. And so it's stuck. And then I got it trademarked like 2 or 3 years ago. So it is a trademark name. So I own that trademark, you know.
That's appropriate.
Yeah. And I'm working on the USA trademark, which is Uncle Stoner approved. A lot of people understand, but that's what the USA stands for. And my USA squash shop is not United States of America. No, it's Uncle Stoner approved.
Yeah. Okay. Well, now I know. So you did your first one at the Chalice Festival. Is that in California?
Yes, California. Yeah, we had, I think, there at that time, we didn't do any limits on how many entries we take. Not smart. Yeah, my judges want. I think I got a lot like Frenchie saying, this is the most fucked up I've ever been. You know, Frenchie Canole sitting there saying how high he was. But I think we started out, I think we had 27 to 28 entries starting our first competition. Actually, it had to go 2 days. 3 days, I think, because we had a tie. So some ties. So it went 3 days long, our first squash off there at Chalice at Rosin booth, because they had a 50 by 50. Yeah, it's funny because when I came up with the idea, I call it Vinny or Sam, one of the main owners of Rostec. I'm like, hey, I got an idea about this competition. Making hash, rosin competitions. Oh, can I do it at your booth? Sure, Uncle Stoner. They didn't realize the magnitude of it because we had at least 150 to 200 people there at all times watching and stuff and seeing what's going on. We had the police coming in. There's a video of me showing the police what the rosin looks like, all that stuff. They came in and checked it out. So it turned out pretty good for our very first one. It turned out good. I didn't even have the name Squash Off yet, actually, until Matt Stain actually came up to me. He goes, wow, what are you doing here? I said, well, it's kind of like that idea I told you. He goes, well, what do you call it? I said, Squash Off. You know, so that's how I came up with the name Squash, because you squash it. I mean, so I figured that would be a good name. That's kind of how, right on the spot, I came up with the name Squash Off.
So you've done over 30 so far?
Yes, 31 of them. From Mexico, Jalisco, where you were at, to Amsterdam. We've done 2 in Amsterdam. We've done several here in Michigan. We've done several in California when you didn't have to have the DC or D1, C1 license, extract license right there on site to do it now, unfortunately. But yeah, we've done several at High Times, Chalice, Blazer Cup, Kush Stock, all of them. We've done some CBD one. We've done a CBD one, Buffalo, New York. We did one this year in Vegas. We just did another one at the Freedom Rally, the third one at the Freedom Rally. We're about to go back to Massachusetts in November for the Harvest Cup there in Worcester, Mass. They've asked us to do a squash off there at their event as well. So we'll be going back there, and that'll be our last one of the year. My wife and I, we take the winter off and go over to Jamaica, and that's where we concentrate on our seed breeding. We do a lot of breeding of different genetics and stuff. We take a lot of the things that we like and get some of these land races from some of these families that's been growing it for the last 4 generations. And we've been blessed enough to let us do pheno hunting of that. And so we've been creating some different strains while we're there in Jamaica. We've been doing that for the last 5 years. And then we come back to Michigan and grow, and we come back here in Michigan and test grow.
How does the legalization look in Jamaica? Well, that looks pretty nice there.
This one is this is a Zetos. It's Caribbean Zittles. It's our Caribbean strawberry cross with it's a cheese Skittle cross, which Milo, as a gift, gave me some Zittles a year ago. And we grew that out. And then this here still needs to be whipped up a little bit, but this is our straight Caribbean strawberry. This is a medical strain. It is 50.8 or 50.53% TH3 and 17.83 CBD.
Oh, that's a high CBD concentrate.
Oh yeah, the Delta 8s and Delta 9s are amazing. Of course, it needs to be whipped up right now, so it doesn't look that good. I'm still working on that one. But yeah, we created a few other different strains and stuff because I said I'm a medical patient. Yes, I like getting high, but I also need it medically wise. So I need some stuff that has the myrcene in it, the terpenes that open up different receptors, CBD receptors and stuff, and then have the Delta 8s and Delta 9s and all the CBD in here to actually affect me. So that's why my wife and I created this strain. It's a good medical strain for me and those others.
What do you call that strain?
That's our Caribbean strawberry. We started out with Crockett Strawberry Fields, which is the strawberry banana times the tangy. And then we crossed it with some Afghan Kush, some purple sour tangy, sour diesel, sweet island skunk, and a few others. And we back crossed. Yeah.
It took a few generations for that.
Oh yeah, we've been working on it for the last 5 years. And locally though, in Jamaica, because of the sunlight there, you get basically 12 hours on, 12 hours off. So you can do 2 breeding projects. We can in the 6 months we can do 2 breeding projects there.
Yeah. Well, it's completely different in Michigan, where you basically have one season and you harvest in October, right? So how is it looking there in Michigan right now?
It's all right. Of course, I'm blessed because I have a friend that has a huge greenhouse, set up to the 9 with, the Gavita lightings, the fans. We got all the water tanks, all this stuff. So most of the growing, the test growing I do in the greenhouse and everything. So luckily, but a lot of our genetics that I have let out to other people here that've been growing it outdoors, they're loving it. Except some did have problems because we had some big storms about 3 weeks ago and stuff. So a lot of the plants got hit hard, but a lot of the plants that they had of ours, because they were so big, did all right.
So you've only got one more squash off this year in Massachusetts. Have you got anything you're planning or in the works for next year?
Yes, we have. I'll be the first one. Will be the first weekend of April. We'll be at the Hash Bash Cup here in Michigan with Adam L. Brook and at the Hash Bash Cup. We've done that a few times already. People have been demanding. People have been asking us, when are you coming back? When are you coming back? Because they love the competition. Because that's the thing about our competition. You can't buy it. Plain and simple. There's no way to buy it. The proof's in the pudding. We put everything under a microscope. You get expert judges sit there and judge it and everything right there in front of you. So you can't. And then everybody hears the score, so you can't buy it. So a lot of people are requesting this. After that, April, then we got May. We got our own standalone CBD squash off in Wisconsin. We're going to do a CBD. What's that?
Where at in Wisconsin?
Oh, God. I forgot to get it down. I'll have to send it to you. I apologize. I wish my wife was.
I usually go, this year I'm not, to the Great Midwest Marijuana Harvest Fest. I first went to that back in 1988 they recently, just last year in Madison, they made it legal to smoke marijuana anywhere that you can smoke tobacco. So there's no law against it at all in the city of Madison, Wisconsin, though
we're right outside of there. That's why I think we're like 30 minutes outside of Madison. That's why we did it that close to that area. So we're in that upper zone. Actually, and I forgot April, I have 3 different choices there. Virginia wants us to do a squash off. Acapulco, Mexico, with the Mayan Hayes people, they want us to do a squash off for them also on 420. And then people in Kansas City, Missouri, they want us to do one on the 16th. We probably do the one on the 16th, and then we have to either fly to Mexico or fly to Virginia. So it's still up there. I'm just seeing whoever gives us the contract first, because I need to have contracts and stuff before because I've sat there without contract, say, yes, I'm doing this, and then turn other people down. And then all of a sudden this one falls through. So first one to try and give me a good, so that's what we're waiting for right now. So we're booked up all the way till June of next year.
Yeah. I see.
Yeah. Amsterdam, May after our standalone one on the 14th, on the 20th, we're going to Amsterdam. If knock on wood, everything goes good, and we'll be doing probably a hash squash off there in Amsterdam, probably around the 27th of May. I'll fly in there on the 20th, do the filming, because I'm going to go around to all the different coffee shops and people that entered, do interviews with them and all that. And then we'll have the squash off probably on the 27th then in Amsterdam.
Okay. Well, if anybody wants to reach out to you, Bobby, how would they do that?
There's several ways. You can reach me on IG under Uncle Stoner, one word. You can reach us there under Squash Off or USA Squash Off on IG. Same thing on Facebook page, our USA Squash Off page on Facebook, or also I have my Uncle Stoner page on Facebook as well. And then, of course, my YouTube channel, Uncle Stoner.
Right.
And, yeah.
So is there anything else you'd like to say in terms of the movement, your work, anything else out there?
I've been blessed to be in this cannabis arena, and I'm glad I'm in it. I mean, there's been some hard times, but the good times and seeing what this plant can truly do for people have made it all worth all the hard times and persecution I've went through for this plant, and you went through for this plant. A lot of us have gone through a lot of persecution for this plant, and that's one of the things I'm hoping these younger kids understand. It wasn't all this easy. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, people don't understand that we were looked down upon. We were pulled in these rooms, strip shirts, with guns pulled on us. All that stuff that we went through over this plant that they have freedom for. And I just hope that these young kids realize that and don't forget about those people that paved the way for what we can do now in this world with this plant. There's a long way to go, but we have gone a long way. And I just hope people remember people like Eddie left, a lot of other people that passed away that made a difference for, in the world for this plant and stood up for it. There's a lot more people out there that we've lost.
Yeah, standing on the shoulders of giants, there's no doubt,
Yeah.
A lot of my mentors didn't live to see this day, from Jack Ayer and Dr. Todd Mickeria to many others that will go unnamed for the moment. But
I mean, the list goes on. The list goes on, and luckily there's people out there keeping the memory alive, like Jair Villamy with World of Cannabis. He has a lot of those people and things in his museum and stuff. So he's trying to keep that alive. And same with Amy Fisher. A lot of people are still trying to keep alive a lot of the people that made a difference and where we're at today.
Right. Well, I want to thank you for coming on, Bobby. We've had Bobby West, also known as Uncle Stoner, with the Squash Off and Uncle Stoner Approves Squash Off.
Can I give a shameless plug on my web page? On my
That's why you're here, to give shameless plug.
As I said, I've been around the world, and I've seen a lot of products out there. And there's some good ones and there's some bad ones. And then there's some new ones out there, very innovative. So I started a site called shopunclestoner.com. There's a lot of stuff mine in there. And as the weeks go by, I'll be putting a lot of other people's products up there that I believe in. And the reason I believe in it is because they put the people and the plant first over their profit. They care about the product and the people, and they're good products. And that's why they're going to be on my page. So yeah,
and what's that website again?
shopunclestoner.com.
shopunclestoner.com. Okay. Well, thank you again. I look forward to seeing you somewhere down the Hempen Trail here for sure. Sure.
I'd love to have you as a judge again, anytime as a judge to come on. Or just come and speak. Or just come and speak. To have you around.
I haven't been to the Hash Bash or the Freedom Rally, so maybe I'll try to reserve a spot.
You should.
Huh?
I think you should. I'll talk to if you want to come, I'll make sure they give you a room.
Oh yeah, I definitely want to come for sure.
Okay, I'll talk to Adam.
I can, You remember my presentation.
Now, Adam, Mr. Hash Bash, the one that runs the Hash Bash Cup, is actually outside right now. So
okay. Well, we got to get him on the show sometime soon too.
And one of your former employees, she owns a piece of the Hash Bash Cup too, Melissa.
Oh, all right.
So you're good to go.
All right. Well, I help patients in a dozen different cities across Michigan, from Marquette and Houghton Lake even, and Kalamazoo and Grand Rapids. We had an office there in Southfield, and worked in Matt Abel's office sometimes down in central Detroit as well.
Yeah. It's amazing all the people that you know that we know. It's funny. So I could be somewhere in the world and all of a sudden someone mentions your name. I'm like, oh, I know Paul. Yeah. It's a small world, but a big world, And it's great to see people that you affect and that care about you when you're a good person like you.
Keep trying. Thank you. And you too. Thanks for being on, Bobby. Keep working to restore him. Good night.
Peace out. Many blessings. Thank you all for listening. Have a blessed day, evening, morning, wherever it is, wherever you're at. Peace out.
Ok, también vamos a estar regalando estos blondes de hemp de la marca Leaf.
It's hard to throw them. As is.
I only need it when he stops playing.
México lindo y querido, si muero lejos de ti, te digan que estoy dormido y que me traigan aquí. México lindo y querido, si muero lejos de ti, que me entierres en la sierra de los magueyales y que me cubres la tierra de hombres cabales. México lindo y querido, si muero lejos de ti, que digan que estoy dormido y que me traigan. México lindo y querido, si muero lejos de ti.
Grow some weed and make a whole bunch of money.
I am so high right now. You'd be interested in buying some potpourri?
Can I have another one?
Don't act like you've never seen a telepathic cow before.
Replace the corn we grow with the green we know. She's the tree of life. It's a beautiful day to give the green goddess praise for these beautiful days. From the words that I say to the music I play, I bring the green goddess praise.